Do you guys ever wonder why the government promotes the expansion of urban areas, design and evaluate alternative highway proposals, even if there is an existing main road that is used by commuters and motorists every day? This is because of their preparation for the future traffic volumes and mobility caused by rapid economic growth. My name is Julius, and together with my groupmates Clark, Lindomar, Mart, and Dave, we will present the topic travel demand forecasting and one of its subtopic, which is travel generation. Travel demand forecasting is used to predict future transport demand when establishing transportation plans in the future. It also gives basic data to evaluate the efficiency of a particular transport facility or policy. Basically, this is just a method used to anticipate transportation demands in the future based on land use, the number of trip makers, and the nature of transportation system so that we can evaluate and find an appropriate solution to it. The first forecasting model is trip generation. It is the first step in the travel demand forecasting processes. Its purpose is to estimate the number of trips in a specific zone. The main factors affecting trip generation include income, vehicle ownership, household structure, and family size. The next presenter will further discuss trip generation and the classification of trip.
So ngayon, dadako tayo sa classification of trips. Ano-ano nga ba yung mga classification of trips? So dito, meron tayong apat na classification. Ang una ay home-based trip, non-home-based trip, time-based trip, person type-based trip. So yan. So unahin natin syempre yung panguna, home-based trip or HB. So our trips were one of the trip end is home. So madali lang yan. Bale, kung ang pinagmulan mo ay bahay nyo or ang pupuntahan mo ay bahay nyo, yun ay tinatawag na home-based trip. Basta may kinalaman ng home, yun ay tinatawag na home-based trip. So ito yung example na nakalagay sa PPT namin. A trip from home to SM Bataan. So pangalawa, a trip from Starbucks to home. So as you can see, parehong involved yung home. So puntahan man yan o pinanggalingan mo. So number two, non-home-based trips or NHB. Our trips were none of the trip ends is home. So kabaliktaran ng home-based trip kung saan walang involvement ng home. So examples, a trip from school to bar, a trip from bank to restaurant. So as you can see, walang kinalaman or hindi ka nang galing, hindi mo pinuntahan yung home, yung bahay nyo. So number three, time-based trips. So ito yung are trips with different purposes that vary with the time of the day. So dito, sa time-based trips, ito ay data-based or dito malalaman mo na um, kung gaano yung volume na meron ng mga vehicles sa specific time, no? For example, ito yung as you can see from the PowerPoint, um, yung Excel, ito ay kunwari, sabihin natin na sa Balanga City. So as you can see, 7 to 7:30, merong 34 cars, 8 bus, 42 wheelers, and so forth. Pero to summarize, makikita natin na from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, yun yung pinakamarami yung volume ng vehicle. So sa cars, 55, sa bus, 14, sa two-wheelers, 57. Bakit? Kasi dito sa span ng oras na to, ito yung span na papasok na yung mga nagtatrabaho, estudyante, yung mga aplikante, yung mga driver. Kaya marami ring two-wheelers hinahabol nila yung 8 o'clock na schedule nila. So, pang number 4, person type based trips are trips of an individual mainly dependent on their socio-economic attributes. In short, yung person type based trips ay nakabase sa antas ng pamumuhay ng isang tao. So, merong mga factors na dito sa number 4. Income level, car ownership, household size. So, isa-isahin natin. Sa income level, alam naman natin na kapagka may kaya ka sa buhay, mayaman ka, so siyempre madalas ka rin bumiyahe. So, nagliliwaliw sila, 'no, sana all, 'no, pupunta sila ng Starbucks, pupunta sila ng Tagaytay, Boracay. So, magbabakasyon sila. Madalas sila magbakasyon kasi nga mataas yung income level nila. So, sa pangalawa, yung car ownership, siyempre kung accessible sila sa meron silang sariling kotse or meron silang service, 'no? So, ibig sabihin, financially stable, ibig sabihin meron silang car. So, siyempre may posible or kadalasan madalas rin sila mag-travel kasi or madalas rin silang gumawa ng trip, 'no? Kasi siyempre meron silang access sa mga medium na katulad ng vehicles, kotse, or anything else. So, sa pangatlo, yung na factor ay household size. Siyempre, kung marami kayo sa pamilya nyo, siyempre, marami dun pumapasok, marami dun nagtatrabaho, marami dun may appointment, or may concern, hospital, ganon. So, ibig sabihin, nakaka-apekto yon sa trips nyo. Ibig sabihin, mas marami kayong trip na nagagawa sa isang araw or sa isang buwan. So, yun lamang. Thank you.
Trip production is the home end of an home-based trip. Pwedeng tayo nagmula sa home or pwede maging destination natin ang home. And the beginning of a non-home-based trip. Yung non-home-based trip ay yung kasama dito ang home. Sa trip attraction is the non-home end of an home-based trip and the end of an non-home-based trip. Next is the example of production and attraction. Sabi nga kanina, kapag trip production is the home end of an home-based trip. Or ang home-based trip ay kasama lagi sa travel ng home. Pwedeng ito yung puntahan natin or pwedeng dito tayo manggaling. Tulad ng example na to, home to employment site. Ang magiging trip production natin dito ay home at ang trip attraction natin dito ay ang employment site. Pag sinabi namang non-home-based trip, ito yung from store to employment. Sabi kanina, sa trip production, the beginning of a non-home-based trip. Kapag trip attraction naman ay the end of a non-home-based trip. Kaya kapag galing ka ng store to employment, ang magiging trip production mo ay ang store. Ang trip attraction mo naman ay ang employment site.
Good day, everyone. Let us move on to our next topic, which is trip generation model. There are 3 types of trip generation model, which are regression method, trip rate analysis, and cross analysis. First one, regression method. Regression analysis is a method used to estimate both production and attraction because it relies on zonal aggregated data. In this method, multiple linear regression method is used. It is a statistical technique that uses 2 or more independent variables to predict the outcome of a dependent variable. In this example, we have 4 independent variables, which are zonal population, zonal monthly income, vehicle ownership, and adults per household. Gagamitin natin itong independent variables na to identify our dependent variable, which is the number of trips per day. Makikita natin dito sa baba, meron tayong values per independent variables. Ngayon, gagamitin natin itong values na to at ilalagay natin, isasalpak natin siya sa formula, this formula, to get our y, which is the number of trips per day for these 3 different zones. Makikita natin dito na sinubstitute lang yung mga data and this correspond in their corresponding coefficient to identify the number of trips per day per zone. Next is trip rate analysis. Trip rate analysis is a method of estimating the number of trips generated by a specific land use or development. It is based on the average number of trips generated per unit of land use or land development, such as per person, per household, or per square foot. Dito sa example natin, meron tayong trip generation rates by trip purpose and employee category. Makikita natin dito sa left side itong HBW or home-based work trips, HBO or home-based other trips, and NHB for non-home-based trips. And makikita natin dito sa taas yung employee category, which is non-retail, downtown retail, and other retail. Dito sa table na to, makikita natin yung trip rates per type of trips and per type of employee. For example, meron tayong 1.7 non-home-based work trips for non-retail, downtown, and other retail employees. Meron naman tayong 2 trips per non-retail employee for HBO. Meron naman tayong 5 per downtown retail employees and 10 for other retail employees. Tapos for NHB, meron tayong 1 trip per non-retail employee, 3 trips per downtown retail employee, and 5 trips for other retail employee. Ngayon, gagamitin natin itong trip rates na to identify the total trips per day. Dito sa example natin, gagamitin natin siya sa example. A commercial center in the downtown contains several retail establishments and light industries. Employed at the center are 220 retail and 650 non-retail workers. Determine the number of trips per day attracted to his zone. Dito natin gagamitin yung table. Ang gagawin lang natin is we will multiply the number of employees to their corresponding trip rates. For example, for home-based work trips, meron tayong 1.7 trips for downtown retail employees and 1.7 din for non-retail employees. Tapos ang gagawin lang natin, 220 times 1.7 plus 650 times 1.7. Ganon din ang gagawin natin sa HBO. 220 times yung corresponding trip rate, which is 5 for downtown retail employees and 2 for non-retail employee. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng 220 times 5 plus 650 times 20. Tapos ganun din gagawin natin sa NHB. 220 times 3 plus 650 times 1. Then we will add those 3 para makuha natin yung total number of trips per day. Ganon ang ginagawa sa trip rate analysis. Lastly, we have cross-analysis. Cross-classification analysis is a technique developed by the Federal Highway Administration to determine the number of trips that begin or end at home. Home-based trip generation is a useful value because it can represent a significant portion of all trips. The first step is to develop a relationship between socioeconomic measures and trip production. The two variables most commonly used are average income and auto ownership. Sa, sa cross-classification analysis, magkakaroon tayo ng dalawang classifications. And we will get the relationship between those two classification para makuha natin yung trip rates nila. Para makuha natin yung trip rates for those specific classifications. In this example, ang classification natin is number of person per household and number of vehicles per household. Dito sa table na to, makikita natin sa table 1, ito munang table. Meron tayong total home-based non-work rates or trip rates. Ang ginamit natin is yun nga, number of person and number of vehicles. Kinuha natin yung relationship nila para makuha natin yung trip rates under those two classifications. For example, meron tayong 0.6 number of trips para sa one person household with 0 vehicle, 2.1 naman para sa 2 to 3 person per household with 0 vehicle, and 4.6 trips para naman dun sa 4 person household na may 0 vehicle, and 7 for 5 and above person with 0 vehicle. Ganun. And so on and so forth. Makikita naman natin sa table. Ito, nasa blue part ay yung kanilang trip rate. Gagamitin natin to just like dun sa trip rate analysis. I-multiply natin yung trip rate, itong mga nasa blue na to, sa number of population corresponding doon sa two classifications na yun. Dito sa kabilang table, makikita natin yung number of household na i-multiply natin dito sa ating trip rates. For example, meron tayong 100 households na may 1 person at 0 vehicle. Tapos 200 naman ang merong 2 to 3 person with 0 vehicle, and so on and so forth. Gagamitin natin ito at multiply natin siya dito sa trip rate para makuha natin yung pinaka-total number of trips for a specific given time. Makikita natin dito, ito yung nasa pinakababang table. Makikita natin yung pinag-multiply na 0.6 times 100, 2.1 times 200. Then, yung mga data na to is i-add lang natin to get yung overall total natin na trips. Total number of trips for a specific time period. Aside from number of person per household and number of vehicles, pwede rin gamitin yung, for example, number of or yung average monthly income or yearly income, ganun. That's it for our, okay, thank you. That's it for our lesson for today. Thank you for listening.